From the time they were a month old, they were already counted. And then there was a second counting when they were already
older.
When they were already 30 years old. Advent, Chamishim, between the ages of 30 and 50, but then they were counted again. And what were they counted between the ages of 30 and 50?
Why? A war. Service.
A work, did you say? Yeah, it's very nice one. They were counted because a person, Rashi says over there, that a person when he's 30 years old, that's his, his bodily power when he's 30 years old. And when he gets 50, he already begins to slow down.
Yeah.
So he's not so good for work. And the Levim, they were meant to work in the Mishkan, and also when they traveled from place to place, they had to carry physically, or with the help of carts and cattle, they carried and they loaded all the carts and everything, and they had to move from place to place. So you had to be physically able if you were going to be a Levi. Yeah, therefore there was a separate counting when they were 30 up to 50, which means that the Levium, their actual number was counted from the moment they were a month old. And so Rashi writes over there why, because they were so special, and they were like, as he called the legion of the king. They were the leaders of the Jewish people, the Levium, because the Kohanim were part of the Levium, as you know. And therefore, you had to treat them very specially, and you counted them from the moment they stopped being what's called a navel. How do you call that? How do you say a navel? A person
stillborn.
That's prematurely born, huh?
Stillborn.
Stillborn. Well, yeah, stillborn. It's something like that. After a month, you know, the person's not going to pass away. Once he's gone past a month, then you know he's going to be a living child. From that moment, they counted the Levium. However, that was just a general count to know how many Levium there were. To know how many Levium can actually do the work, there was a separate counting. Now, does anybody remember the three sons of Levi, Gershon, Kahos, and Merari? Who was what was the order of their birth? Who was the leading, how do you call it, the Bechor, and who not, and so on and so forth? Does anybody remember? Okay, so it's foretell clearly over there in last week's Parsha that Gershon, he was the Bechor of Levi. He was the firstborn. And then afterwards was Kahos, and afterwards was Merari. However, at the end of last week's Parsha, we already counted the Bnei Kahos. We counted them for the age of 30 to 50 in order for them to carry out their work. Does anybody remember what was their work? What was the work of the Bnei Kahos?
The Mishkan.
Huh?
The Mishkan? Mishkan?
Build the Mishkan?
Carry the Mishkan.
Yeah, they carried on their shoulders, but what did they carry?
A lot of stuff.
No, the
Mishkan? The holes, the
pillars.
Pieces, the
What did they carry?
skins, the roof.
They carried the Oren, on their shoulders, and they also carried the Mizbeach, Apnimi, and they carried the menorah and the Shulchan. In other words, the main kelim, I think also the Mizbeach HaChitzah, the main kelim of the base, the main vessels, but the main thing was the Oren. The Oren with the luchas inside it, the Bnei Kahos, they had to carry that on their shoulders. And it's well known that it's a very special mitzvah that they must carry it on their shoulders. And later in history, David HaMelech made a mistake about that. But I can see you guys are a little bit fuddled today, so I'm not going to test you about that. What happened later in history, we'll sort of gradually work you into some sort of a gear. The Bnei Kohoz were counted first. Now, they're not the Bechorim. So why would the Bnei Kohoz, why would they be counted first? If they're not the firstborn, why would they be counted first? Can anybody picture in his mind why we would count them first before we count other people, the other two families?
Maybe Moshe and Aaron.
Huh?
Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam.
Because of the Aaron, you said?
No, Moshe, Aaron, the Kohen.
Yeah, because Moshe and Aaron are amongst them, yeah, that's a good suggestion. That because Moshe and Aaron are amongst them, that's a good suggestion. Yeah, Moshe and Aaron are the leaders of the whole Jewish people. Yeah. So since they were there, they got counted first. But one can argue about that. Well, let's not go into it. But what does anybody suggest why they got counted first?
Because they're carrying the
They're carrying the things that...
They're kalim. They're carrying the kalim. They're carrying the kalim.
They carried the kalim.
Yeah.
So what's so important about the kalim? They carried the Oren.
Oh.
They carried the Oren.
Yeah.
Together with it, they carried the kalim.
Yeah.
So now, if you were to be asked, what is the most important thing in the whole Mishkan, what would you say?
The Aaron.
Huh?
The Aaron.
The Oren. You'd say the Oren. The Ramban holds that the whole Mishkan was built for the sake of the Oren. The Ramban holds that the Oren in the Kodesh HaKadoshim and the Holy of Holies was like a preservation of Matan Torah. And therefore it was like the moment that Hashem gave Moshe the Torah on Sinai. And therefore the Kohen Gadol was only able to go in once a year, because a very holy and unbelievably climactical place, the Kodesh HaKadosh, where the Oren was. So therefore, since the Bnei Koz, they had to carry the Oren, therefore we counted them first. Or why did we choose the Bnei Koz to count the Oren? That's another question. Why didn't the firstborn get the first privilege? Yeah, Gershon, he's older than Koz. He's the firstborn. So he should have got. But for whatever reason, we can go into that also, because it's brought down and considered that the Bnei Koz, they held on a certain madrega. They were very high people. Because they were very high people, they got the right to carry the Oren, and it was a very big responsibility to carry the Oren on their shoulders, v'chulu. But you know the famous story what the Gemara brings about when they were carrying the Oren. I see you guys are all very, you're all very sort of, today, you're all very fashloven.
There was a chasana last night.
Yeah, no.
הריבה והלילה קצרה. הריבה והלילה קצרה. לפני שבועות.
לא קלטתי בדיוק, אבל העניין הוא שהאם they carried the Oren, but the Oren carried them. It's written they had to put their shoulder to the Oren, and then the Oren lifted their feet off the ground. The Oren carried them. So from that we learn a very important inyan. If you give yourself over to a very holy thing, then ultimately it's not your power, it's not your koyach that's carrying your head. You're doing what you have to do, and then later you are being carried. Yeah. So the Bnei Koz then, they have the tremendously important task of carrying the Oren. So therefore, their work is like the key work of the whole Mishkan, L'divrei Ramban, and therefore they were given the privilege of being counted first. And that was because of this great advantage or elevation that they had, that they were carrying the Oren and the Menorah and the Shulchan, which are they're the highest inyanim in the Beis Hamikdash. So now comes along, we finished how many there were, from 30 to 50 in the Bnei Kohos, and then we dealt with a couple of other matters, and we finished the previous parsha. Now we begin, now we want to go back to the counting of the Levium from 30 to 50, and so the next in the line is Gershon. So therefore the Torah says, now we're going to count the Bnei Gershon, and it says, Gam Haim, them also. Now, what is the implication of the expression, them also, Gam Haim? Because the reason we got everything out of order was that we dealt and counted the Bnei Kohos. And because the Bnei Kohos had a very special advantage to them, both in their own selves and in what they carried, therefore we mentioned them and we counted them first. Not just mentioned them, but we counted them first. So now we come to the Bnei Gershon. What the Bnei Gershon, they can claim it where the Bechor, we should have to count it first. So therefore the pasuk says, oh yes, I haven't left them out of Cheshbon. Come home, they're also going to be counted. However, if I translate the words Gam Haim, they also, in that way, that it's almost like a slightly technical inyan, that they should have been counted first for reasons they weren't. So we said, listen, I haven't left them out of Cheshbon, they're also going to be counted right now. And the Bali HaTosfos, the Das HaKenim, the Bali HaTosfos, they learned that Peshat. However, like all inyanim in the Torah, you can take it ever so slightly deeper. And you can say, listen, why did we change the order of the sons of Levi and we counted Kohos first? Because Kohos has a very special greatness about him. And he's a very remarkable family, Kohos, and they're carrying the whole purpose of the whole Mishkan, the whole Inyan. However, the Bnei Gershon also have a mile. Come home, they've also got a mile. Because if I've already changed the Seder, then maybe I can change it all together. I can put the Bnei Mori next. So he said, no, there's something special also about the Bnei Gershon. Gam Haim, they also have something very special. Yep. And this is brought out by the fact that when we get to the Bnei Merori, a few psukim further, then he doesn't say Nasoi, that's where he elevate their head. He just says the Bnei Merori and how much there were, the number that they were from 30 to 50, and he doesn't say count them or elevate their head. Well, from that it would tend to indicate, like we've been learning, that this expression, elevating the head, which basically means to count, is a very special term. And it means, even in the simple understanding, that there's something very special when I elevate the head. And therefore Rashi over there, at the beginning of Bamidbar, Rashi learns a very, very amazing statement in reference to elevating the head, which means counting. So Rashi says, why didn't you just say count? Why did you say elevate the head? So Rashi said it can be compared that in the old days when the king used to say to his executioner, Chas v'sholem, he used to have a guy with an axe that used to cut off people's heads. He used to say, lift up the head of Pliny, and Pliny means to cut off his head altogether. So that's what Rashi learned. So it comes along the Ramban, the Ramban says that's a very cruel and extreme thing. Why does Rashi have to bring that in? just say that you're elevating him in some way. What do you mean? Rabbi said, elevate the head altogether? So some of the great interpreters tell us that what that means is that Rashi says that in order to start off a new world where we're just getting the Torah, we've just built the Mishkan, and we just got the Torah. The way is you have to have a new head. You have to take your old head and you have to, as it were, cut off your old head. And you have to throw away your head and you have to put on a new head. And therefore the Alter Rebbe in Aman Siddur, in Pasuk Bamidbar, the Alter Rebbe said, Ilu hoya nimtza b'refuas. If we could have found in medicine some way to take off somebody's head and then put it back, yeah, he said, that's what we're implying. So, I tell you, that's a pretty amazing thing. Once you cut off a guy's head, you can't really put it back on. So that's what the Alter Rebbe said. We don't have so, but if we did, that would be the implication. And that's what Rashi's hinting at, which means that you've got to elevate your head. And you've got to take that head off and put on a new head. That's what Rashi said. Which means, yeah, that you have to think, you have to start thinking completely differently. Yeah. And there's an old saying by the Hasidim that if you want to know what to do, is everybody calm? What I'm going to say now is hot stuff. If you want to know what to do, then you ask a misnagid and you do the opposite. I can't surprise anybody around here. So it seems that everybody is very into Chabad here. They're not sort of, surprised by any, rather extreme Chabad statement. So if you want to know what to do, you ask a misnagid and then you do the opposite. So the old head that you had, that's like a misnagid. So you mustn't ask the old head. But if you do, then you have to be ready to do otherwise. And therefore you have to put on a new head. So that's what it means to elevate the other head. That's what Rashi is implying. And it appears in a moment from the Alter Rebbe in a very similar type of, how do you call it, a bracket. So therefore you got to put on a new head. Nasoi es roish means to elevate the, thanks Benjamin, to elevate the head. So therefore it's interesting that by the B'nai Kohos, it's written, you have to elevate the head, and by the B'nai Gershon. But if we look at the B'nai Merori, it's not written. You have to elevate the head. So ask yourself the question, what does that imply? Does that imply that the B'nai Merori are pushing the guys that they, you don't really need to, they were left till the end, and the bigger Inyonim was said by the B'nai Kohos and the B'nai Gershon. Or maybe it could imply that the B'nai Merori are so basic and so powerful in their Inyan, they don't need you to say to elevate their head. They're already in some way elevated, or they've already got a trick and a key in them that they don't need to be elevated. Therefore we don't say Gam Heim of by the B'nai Gershon, we say Gam Heim. Oh yes, they've got a very special Mila, just like the B'nai Kos, and therefore count them in a way of elevating their head. With the B'nai Merori, we have to work it out. Which way does it swing? Yeah? So, in order to do that, as is customary in these classes, we're going to start with telling a story. Well, I said nobody's particularly interested in the story.
I want to hear it.
And that is that they say that once the Friedrich Rebbe was, after he'd arrived in America, he was in the building of 770. And I have a feeling that the Rebbe was already after the Rebbe had arrived in Toshinalu. The Rebbe arrived. I'm pretty sure that they were standing together, because I think he was still alive, this person. And they saw walking on Eastern Parkway a very famous chassid. And he was called, what was his name? I've just forgotten his name for a minute. Anyway, it'll come back to me. He was a very famous chassid, and he's walking on the, and he had a big red beard. He had a big sort of beard, and his beard just a sort of flow, with the wind, It was sort of, big long beard. And he's walking on 770, on Hadikot, on Eastern Parkway. So the Friedrich Rebbe looked out the window, and if the Friedrich Rebbe looked out the window, whoever was in the room also looked out the window. And the Rebbe said, he said, the person's name was Avram. What was his other name? I just forgot. That's amazing. It's jumped my mind. His other name, his family name, but he was called Rabbi Avram. So he saw him walking. The Friedrich Rebbe said when he walked on 770, on Eastern Parkway, then that's like it's written in the Midrash about Avram Avinu, that Echad Hoya Avram, that there was a whole generation, but the one that really was Echad, he was the one, that was Avram. In other words, all the generation was, as it were, like just to lead and to serve and to give rise to Avram Avinu. He said, when this person walks on the street and his red beard blows in the wind, and that's just like the Inyan for Echad Hoya Avram. Avram Avinu was the only person in his whole generation. You learned Pirkei Avos last week that Avram Avinu was the only one who really got anything moving after all the generations before that. You know about that. It's written in the Mishnah. As a matter, it follows from that there can be a person that's walking on the street, but he can be affecting the whole street, just like as if he, Levi.
Yeah.
Rabbi the Masmid was one of the great Siddim. You heard about him.
Yeah.
So in order to avoid happening what's just happening now to you, he used to sit at night time till late in the night learning. So we used to have a fork, a special fork, with two sort of spikes on it, under his nose. And when he would sort of go right over, and then the fork would hit him, and he would lift up his head.
Wow.
And there's another story, they say that he kept his feet in cold water. And when he was learning. Because in those days, in Russia, the water was cold. And he used to keep his feet in freezing cold water. While he was learning. Just shows you guys we have a luxury life nowadays. Anyway, that was Rabbi the Masmid. That's what you need right now.
Yeah.
However,
that'd be so cool.
Let's take a further Inyan that developed this whole Inyan, just a little bit further. That once the Middle Rebbe said a very special thing also about a chassid that walked down the street in a Russian town. And the Middle Rebbe said that when he walks down the street in the town, then his Yechida Shebanefed, the very highest aspect of his soul, is affecting the whole street. And it's, as it were, being mevatel all the clippers, and he's walking down the street is like, how do you call it, carving a way through all the clippers and all the things in Chutz Haaretz. And later the Middle Rebbe said that anybody who believes in the Eibishter Be'emunah Peshuta, that if he walks down the street, then that Emunah Peshuta touches off with the Yechida, the very highest point in his soul. You know, you have Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida. Then his Yechida, when he's walking down the street, fixes up all sorts of things, and he doesn't even know that it's happening. So that's an amazing thing. You never know what you might be achieving. I I don't recommend that you walk down the street. If you keep off the street, then I'd be quite happy about it. However, if you do happen to walk down the street, you can never know what you might be achieving. Because I'm sure you all have Emunah Pshuta, and you all have Yechidah Shebenefesh, but you can never know what you are achieving when you walk down the street. Up to here are the words of the mitzvah. So now, I want to ask another rhetoric question. What do you think the Yidden trade around in the Midbar for 40 years in a desert? I mean, 40 years in a desert. I mean, would you like even 40 minutes in a desert? 40 years in a desert, and Moshe Rabbeinu stuck with them, and Aaron the Kohen also stuck with them right to near the end, and there was a gezeira on them from Hashem that they're not going to go over into Eretz Yisrael. But that itself is a tremendously moving and tragic union. But however, here they are, the Yidden, and what did they have with them? They had the Mishkan. The Mishkan was with them. And they went 42 different journeys. They went all around between when they left Mitzrayim and they got over to Arvais Moya before they went across into Eretz Yisrael, 42 journeys. But what do you think they were so captured? What do you think they were so about? I mean, 600,000 people, a big, massive group of Yidden with all their offspring and their wives and their families and their guns in, and here they are all draying around. 40 is going here and coming there and coming back. And sometimes they even they backed on their tracks and then went forward again. It's quite an amazing study, all the journeys that the Yidden made in the desert, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Ismaila asked herself the question, what are they doing here? What's going on?
It must have been involved, they must have been getting rid of the klippas.
Getting rid of clippers. Very good. They're getting rid of clippers. That's pretty good. So the Alter Rebbe, at the beginning of this week's Parsha, the Alter Rebbe in Parsha Naso, the Alter Rebbe answers that question. And the Alter Rebbe says like this, Levi, it's not because I know that you don't want to hear that I'm nudging you. Otherwise, I would
I'm trying.
But I suggested several times that we should have a samovar, and we should have good hot coffee, but nobody ever listened to me.
I don't drink coffee.
Yeah, but you drink coffee.
Yeah, that's it.
Smell it, don't drink it.
Bring a stand around here. Bring the stand over here.
I drink coffee.
So, the Alter Rebbe says like that. The Alter Rebbe says that the Midbar is everything that living areas are not. Living areas have vegetation, they have grass, they have something. Yeah, you have normal services like water, you know. You have a bit of food, you have a tree with a fruit, you have something. The Midbar doesn't have any of that. There's absolutely nothing. Yeah? And even more than that, the Midbar HaGodol, where the Yidden moved around, it had what
Snakes, scorpions or something?
Scorpions and snakes.
Snakes, yeah.
Yeah, apart from not having all the usual services, it had scorpions and snakes.
Amen.
So, says the Alter Rebbe Imkain, the Midbar represents the inyan of the clippers, just like somebody said. The Midbar indicates the inyan of the clippers. But why would the midbar, why would that indicate the clippers in such a way that it's like the symbol of everything that's not Kedusha? So anything which is not Kedusha is clippers. So what is the big difference then between where you got people living and they have normal services and the desert? What's the big difference? When you live in normal circumstances, then you have the world producing you what you call hashpah. The world gives to you, it's mashpia. It grows things, it causes things to grow, it causes water to be, it causes all sorts of good things. Something which doesn't give anything, that's clippers. In other words, that the whole definitional inner pneumias of what is clippers and what is kedusha. Are you looking for something, Pinchas? It's a little bit
Sorry.
confusing when the whole time you're going back and forth with the pages. It's what is the difference between kedusha and klippa? Kedusha means ashpah. And therefore, if you don't give ashpah, then you got a big question about where you're holding. The whole inyan is to be mashpia. So you might say, well, I don't have anybody to be mashpia to. Oh yes, you do. You have your own nefesh
Baham.
have your own nefesh bahamiyah. And you got your own nefesh
Yes.
elokis. So you have to be mashpia onto your nefesh bahamiyah. You have to give, but you have to give in a way that you won't just break him and cast him out, but you gradually bring him also into the picture. That's called a ashpah. Not giving and not wanting to give, and klal, not giving, that's called clippers. That's clippers.
I have a question though. What about the gevura, like not giving in a gevura sense? How is that?
But the truth is, that gvura, emes gvura, mitzad kedusha, is also giving. Because why do you get a little bit sharp with somebody? Because you're wanting to correct him and help him. If you get sharp with somebody and you're not trying to help him, and you're not trying to correct him, then that's not gvura or kedusha. It follows from that a very good point is being made here by Boru, that even what looks to be in kedusha are not giving is really a giving. In other words, that if I really love somebody, then I reproach him and look after him. If I don't really care about him, then I don't bother to reproach him. Which means that even my gevura is a giving. My gevura is a very pneumistic giving because I love him and he matters to me. That's the reason why I give, even sometimes with a bit of gevura. So that's what the Alter Rebbe says. The midbar is the symbol of klippos. And he says that reason because the midbar doesn't give anything to anybody. If it does anything it takes, it'll suck in anything you try in a good way to give it, it'll suck it all in. Avamira says the Alter Rebbe, the Oren had to go with the Jewish people, with the 600,000 Jewish souls. They all had to move around the desert in order to be mevatel the klippos. So you might say, that's to be mevatel the klippos. You know, what is the ultimate outcome of that? What is it? So the Alter Rebbe says an absolutely amazing thing. And he says that Moshiach and the whole revelation of Liyosid Lovei, I don't like using the expression Liyosid Lovei, it sounds like something distant, you know. Take of me out now. Moshiach is coming right away. When Moshiach will come, then it's going to be Gila Lakus Mola Ha'oret Deo. The Rambam brings it at the end. The whole world is going to be full of knowledge of Hashem. Even the ground, even the earth itself, the ground is going to be full of knowledge of Hashem. So, the Alter Rebbe says, how are you going to get to that? He said, the clippers are not going to let that happen. He said, therefore, at the beginning of the whole Jewish history and the beginning of the whole history of the Torah, we had to take the most powerful Gilui Elokus, and we had to move around in the desert with the most powerful, the Oren, yeah, and everything. Had to move around in the desert in order to be Machnia, had to cause a bitl in the clippers. They say, well, I mean, they're still holding out. There seems to be a lot of them. Yes, so the Alter Rebbe says, Ein Chanami. There's still the Golas, and there's still a lot of the Torahs connected with the Golas, and the clippers that are still there. He said, but they're fighting a losing battle. They had to call all the generations, the clippers have continued fighting. They are, as it were, losing the battle.
Yeah.
And they are gradually drifting back in front of the clippers. And what's going to happen, Alidei Moshiach, is such a huge revelation that they're going to completely, surrender, and they're going to want to be mishapik like kedusha. In other words, that's going to be the big shidduch. But had the Yidden not gone with the Oren in the Midbar, that wouldn't be able to happen. That's what the Alter Rebbe says. That the clippers would remain all the generations too strong, and they don't want Mashiach to come. You follow? You've got to fight a battle to bring Mashiach. And deep, deep inside, each and every one of us is a little cold little fish. And he also says, Mashiach, yeah. Mashiach, yeah, he's this cold little fish inside. He says, what's all this talk about Mashiach every time? So you've got to know that he's already fighting a losing battle. He's being beaten. That's why he's sort of, he's not powerful as he really should be. The Alter Rebbe said if the Oren hadn't moved around in the desert, you would never be able to get to such a situation. Because right from the beginning, we took the very symbol of the clippers and we mavatl it. You follow? Finished it up. So that's the inyan of the Bnei Kohos. The Bnei Kohos, they carried the Oren, and the Oren is the most holy thing. And we assume that the power to really be mevatel the clippers was kahos. And so therefore it's brought down that the word kahos is from a word in Hebrew which means to assemble people together. Ki loi yikhos amim. It's brought down in a certain posik that the number of peoples will gather. It's used with the kahosu or kahos amim. They will gather together. And therefore, kohos is indicatory of gathering all the koiches of kedusha together to beat the clippers. And because Levi gave this son of his, the second son, the name kohos, well, that's indicatory that deep in, you know, when parents give a name, it's a nevuah, you know that.
Yeah.
That means that person kohos, he had inside himself that ability, and therefore he was given the power of carrying the Oren, and the Oren is the koyach of the Torah, which means that no matter what you do to fight the clippers, if the center of it is not the Torah, then you're fighting a losing battle. But if the center of it is the Torah, and the center of it is not just learning Torah, but the center of it is what we call Kedusha Torah. Yeah, the Oren, it didn't have much in it. I mean, two luchas. According to most authorities, it had also the broken luchas inside. But I mean, that's altogether 20 statements, yeah? Two sets of 10. I mean, yeah, that's like very, very synoptical statement of the Torah, and it is. But what is so special about them that it's so synoptical that that's the Iker Kedusha and the Iker sanctity of the Torah. So Einoch Hanami, your struggle with the clippers, and the Alter Rebbe brings in Lekutei Torah, and the Alter Rebbe brings that each and every one of us has got his own desert, his own midbar. And what's the own midbar, the own desert that you got? The Nefesh Bahami, he's your desert. And he would like to have you a very, how do you call it, dignified and very special with a bowler hat, and all good to say, maybe a bow tie and everything. He wants to have you, but he wants you to be not into Kedusha. You have to carry your Oren in the desert, just like they did then. You're continuing the work. But how do you do it? You have to make sure that the Torah you learn is Kedushas HaTorah, the holiness and the sanctiness. And you have to know that every word you learn in the Torah, you didn't really learn anything. You did, but you didn't. Chas v'sholem. It says that you didn't learn, Avadi you did. But you know the old famous quip of the Baal Shem Tov. You don't know the famous quip of the Baal Shem Tov? That when you find a treasure, let's say you're walking along one day and you don't have anything with you, just walking along, all of a sudden you find a huge treasure, just full of unbelievable treasures and precious stones and golden coins and who's knows what. So what would you do? You would fill up all your pockets, and you would take off your hat and fill up your hat, and you would stuff your breast pockets, and maybe you would try to find a few leaves to make yourself a bag, and you would slip, but you would slip everything you could, but you would have to leave a lot behind. So what would happen to you when you're dragging all that you managed to put into your pocket and your hat and everything? You'd be tremendously happy, because you didn't have it before. You would be tremendously happy. But at the same time, that joy would be stained a bit by the fact that you're leaving so much behind, because you haven't got with what to take. So on the one hand, you're joyful with what you got, but you're pained by what you're leaving behind. So when the Baal Shem Tov said, whenever you're learning Torah, you have to be joyful and you have to be painful. You have to be joyful with what you're learning, but you have to know that you've left who knows what behind. That you haven't been able to grasp it. You don't have with what to carry it. You don't have with what to carry it. Oh, Mela, Lafisa, it follows that what is the important thing about the Torah? The important thing about the Torah is the Kedushas of Torah, the sanctity, and the fact that we know that the Torah is unbelievably more powerful and how do you call it, deep and unendingly deep, like what we manage to get from it. And therefore, if you look at Torah that way, then you're like the B'nai Kahos. You start walking around with your Nefesh Abamiyas and your own midbar, but you've got a tremendously powerful force which is driving away the clippers, and came along the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he said, you're not only driving away the clippers, that's negative. Driving away the clippers is like shouting Ad Matai. That's negativity, Ad Matai. The next step is that you got to say Yechia Melech Hamah Mashiach. You got to greet Mashiach. You got to receive him and greet him. And that's the next step, and that's the positive. That's the positive behind it all, and that's the movement of the Torah and the Bnei Kohos inside the midbar. And you've got a big midbar in your soul, and like we said before, you have this little cold fish inside, and he said, wait a minute, what's all this business, you know? So, that's the Bnei Kohos. Comes along our parsha, and our parsha says you got to elevate also the Bnei Gershon Gam Haim, because they've also got a very special milah in this whole job of bringing a bittul in the clippers and eventually bringing the positivity into the situation. And what is their union? What did the Bnei Gershon, what did they used to carry? Gam Haim, they also have a tremendous milah. What did they carry? I don't suppose everybody says, well, I'm so fed up, you know, I'm so without any koyach. I don't remember what they used to carry, the Bnei Gershon. Does anybody know what the Bnei Gershon? No.
The Pope.
Bnei Gershon?
Bnei Gershon. Mahim Lachu, Mahim Naso.
Floors of cement.
לוקחים את העבודת
No, the curtain.
הם מעשים את כל החלק בחוץ של בית המקדש, של המשכן.
אתה מתכוון על הקלעים?
עבודתה, כן.
They used to carry what's called the curtains, you know, the coverage of the Mishkan, the urias. You know what the urias are? That there was like 3 coverings of the Mishkan. First of all, there's the urias, and then there were other skins that were put on top of them, and then there was a 3rd level of skins. As all these urias and all these skins and that covered the Mishkan, the Bnei Gershon used to carry them. And they also used to carry the curtains that were around the outside of the Chatzer. How do you call it? The Bnei Gershon. They used to carry that. So they carried all the curtains and all the coverings and the things that sort of surrounded the Mishkan in the form of a covering. Now, what is special about a curtain that covers the Mishkan, and a covering that covers the curtains, and then another covering on top of that? What is very special about them? They're not the Torah, and they're not, how do you call it, the menorah, and they're not even the Mizbeach. But what are they? They are what we would call in the Russian of Chassidus, they're the Makifim. Yeah, the Kalim are like the Pnimium, but these are what we call the all enveloping oiras, which are called Makifim. And it's not enough in Avodas Hashem, it's not enough just to have your feeling of Kedusha and devotion mitzad your mind and mitzad commitment, but the Baal Shem Tov taught us that you've also got to have feeling, you've got to have what's called ahava and yira, you've got to have love of Hashem and fear of Hashem. You've got to be, they're called midas, shabalayim, they make you, they're called levity. Not just levity, but they make you emotionally expressive. And if you start off with emotions, then you might say, but emotions, you know, that's a little bit, you know, sort of glamorous, but it can end up in being sentimental, you know. So the answer is that the Bnei Gershon, they represent a love of Hashem, even maybe including a fear of Hashem, that ultimately it leads into a very deep commitment where you get a love which is called Ahava Rabbah in the Lashon of the Tanya, an unlimited type of love. In other words, you have a very profound emotion inside which nothing can shift it. Because if you have ordinary Ahava, then sometimes you feel the Ahava, sometimes you don't feel it. You know, it all depends. I came in this morning done with a minyan, and I hear that most of the guys are just getting over the night before.
Yes.
Which means that the Ahava, maybe wasn't so burning, within all the hearts. Because, the guy's first loving from last night. So, Ahava can order. But once you get into Ahava Rabbah, you get into a very big Ahava, but that's what we call a Makiv Tika Ahava, Ahava mitzad the koyches of the soul beyond the ordinary limitations. Then you don't shake. Then even if you didn't have enough sleep, or you're not in a good mood, or you got a bit of a hangover because you took some mashke the night before, but that's not an official statement, or whatever. He said, nonetheless, the Ahava Rabbah burns inside him, and that keeps you going. And that's what we call rotzoi. And that lifts you off the ground. And then you have what's got that called shoy. You have to come back down again. But then you start off again. And each time you start off again, you're on a higher level. And eventually you reach this very profound Ahava, which is called Ahava Rabbah. And that's the B'nai Gershon. And therefore the B'nai Gershon, the word Gershon, if Russian Gerushin, what Gerushin is would appear to be not a nice thing. Gerushin means divorce. What happens with Ahava Rabbah of this sort? That it drives away all the negative things. You don't have any, it drives out even the delicate things that get in your way, You're already very committed, and you're really into everything, and you're a big chassid, but maybe there's certain delicate things that you haven't been able to finish off yet. Or the B'nai Gershon, they drive that away. The Ahava, from Ahava Rabbah, very powerful love, that drives, that drives away all the little traces of the things that you mightn't get at them if you just went with ordinary feeling and ordinary cycle. But once you come up into a very powerful driving love that doesn't alter and it doesn't change with circumstances, then you get rid of all the not so good little things that you didn't notice before. And that's why Gershon is Gerushin. And that's why the ultimate firstborn is Gershon. Because he's got something that big people are really into brain power the whole time. They say, I don't have any time for emotions, So they say that emotions is only a beginning. But it's a very important beginning. Because ultimately speaking, if you don't have emotion, you remain cold, You remain, like that little cult of fish that we spoke about before. And therefore you need emotion. Therefore the real Bechor is Gershon. He's the real, firstborn. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu means by saying, Hashem says to Moshe, they've also got a big mila. In other words, that the power of the brain is kahos, that's Torah. And that's very essential. And without that you can't really build anything. But if you don't have emotional commitment in the form of unlimited emotional commitment, you're also, you tend to cool off and become what's called in Yiddish, in the Chabadska terminology, a vermoigenter. You become very much into, you're a brain power type, So, that's very elevated and very wonderful, but it's a little bit intellectual. Therefore you have to have the emotions, and you have to have also emotions which lead to a high commitment, and that's called a makim. Okay, so we see that if we deal and we're satisfied with small emotions, then you have them, but then maybe you get up out of the wrong side of the bed the next day and you don't feel the emotion so much. But if you have really committed emotions, then it stays with you. Gershon, that's the B'nai Gershon. It's Asim Cain, what's with the B'nai Merari? What happened with them? It's not written that you have to elevate their heads. And we learn pshat that elevate their heads means You got to introduce them to a whole new. You got to have a new head. Well, that means no matter how much you learn Torah, you got to be continually putting on a new head. You got to have a new way of approach and a new, depth and freshness. And the same with your emotions. You got to elevate them to even higher, like we saw, to more profound and ultimate commitment. You have to elevate the head. By the B'nai Merori, it's not written like that. The B'nai Merori, it's just written what their number was. So the question is that a tremendous miler? Or maybe it's a sign that they're a little bit sort of partial. So we mentioned them. So Chassidus comes along and teaches us that they are so high, the B'nai Merori, that they don't need to be mentioned to elevate the heads, all that. Yeah, for us, well, the B'nai Merori, they're like a Indian, that if you don't have that, then you can forget everything. So he says, well, you've been saying that about everything. So you have to get used to Chabad. You have to know that if you come to Chabad on Rosh Hashanah, you come to the river Rosh Hashanah, you will hear that the highest of all possible things is Rosh Hashanah. That's the highest thing. He says there's no higher than Rosh Hashanah. But go through a few days, and you get to Yom Kippur, or Motzei Yom Kippur, all of a sudden you hear that the highest possible thing, there's nothing higher and more elevated than Yom Kippur. And Rosh Hashanah is nothing like everything. I just said Rosh Hashanah, there's nothing higher than Rosh Hashanah. You get the Sukkot, Sukkot. That is the greatest thing that's ever been. And so it keeps going. And you get to Shavuos, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, that is the highest. All the other Yom Tov are nothing. Which means that it all depends where you've moved into a new, a new dimension. You put on a new head.
Okay, yes.
So what are the B'nai Merori? What do they represent? So the B'nai Merori, they used to carry the krashim, how do you call it, the boards, and they used to carry everything that just stood. It doesn't appear to move. I mean, the Klali also don't move. Nothing really moves, but they stand, and their whole aim is to stand. So what I want to tell you guys is basically a message that occurs in different places and siddhas, that in the old days when we first started working with Bali Shiur, I'm going back now to the late 50s and the early 60s. When we first started working with Bali Shiur, there were like different types. So we used to say about certain people that he just changed his address. He used to be into this, and now he's into that, but he's basically the same person. he changed his address. And then there's another person that he really changes. And he's not the same person. Beklal. Mashallah, altogether. So that's what the Alter Rebbe says, that the ultimate thing is you've got to change, and to be the way you were before, and the way you are after we're coming now to a yontif, yeah? If you're the same way exactly after the yontif you were before, shake hand, very nice. Well, that's not the ultimate is you've got to be something new altogether. I remember I met up with my mashpia once, the day after Yom Kippur, and he took a look at him and he said, it's not good. I said, what's not good, He said, I recognize you. I can recognize who you are, and if you look at me, what do you say about me? So I said, well, yes, I recognize you, I see you. He said, if you recognize me, that's not good. He said, I should be another, I just paid 3 Yom Kippur. I have to be somebody else altogether. So the question is, how do you So when I heard that, I've never quite been the same after I heard that. So what happens that if you're here and you're over here and you're two different people, something in the middle happened. So that change in the middle means that you stop being what you are and you start being something different. But that's called like a very special, like pausing or standing, and you become motionless because you're changing your whole being. But it's a moving motionlessness. It's a motionlessness, but it moves. Do you believe me? It's not moving, but it's moving. And that's the B'nai Merori. The B'nai Merori are the standing part. The Mishkan stood, but it wasn't stationary. The Mishkan stood because it was supposed to take you and make you into something else altogether.
Wow.
And that ability to go through that, to be standing, because you're losing everything you were before, and you're moving into something new. That's the B'nai Merori. And therefore the Alter Rebbe said, without them, forget it. So they're like the base of everything. And therefore we don't need to say, we have to elevate the heads of the B'nai Merori, because they have a very powerful inner from way, way, way high in the head, that's what's making them all together. And they have a very hidden power that even the B'nai Kos and the B'nai Gershon don't have. And therefore we didn't need to mention them, elevate their heads also. We just mentioned how many they are, because they're very special people. As a matter, that's the three sons of Levi. Those are the three people. And they were the Alter Rebbe said there, the Yad HaChazoka and the Yad HaGedola and the Yad Rama, the three hands, you know, big hand and the elevated hand. You ever saw the Rabbi, you guys? By none of the Rabbeim do we ever find this. Whenever the Rabbi would walk out after a farbrengen, he would go like this, you know, with his holy hand. He would, I once had the Rabbi looked at me and gave me a swish like that, 4 of them. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Wow.
Yeah, the Rabbi used to lift up his hand. You notice in a lot of the pictures, like that. Don't find that by the other Rabbi. That's a special in of the Rabbi. Why? Because that's your Ramah. That's the elevated hand. And it's written by Moshiach that he's going to elevate his hand over all the world.
Really?
Yeah, that's what's written in Yeshaya Novi. And that's why the Rebbe, all the time, he's doing this. You look in the pictures and you'll see, he's always doing that. Because that's the elevation of the hand. So I'll leave you to form your own conclusions about that one. And Hashem should help. The main thing is we have to be zeicha. We're finished taking the Mishkan around the Golas. You know, the Mishkan, the Beis HaMikdash. We've been going around with in the Golas, and we're all breaking all the clippers and everything. Enough. The Rebbe said it's already been completed. That's the great chiddush of the Rebbe. And right now we are just going to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash in a completely different form. That it's going to come down, especially from heaven. It's going to be a completely different Beis HaMikdash.
Oh, man.
And we're walking around in the Golas already for 2,000 or 3,000 years with this whole inner beam of Atl, all the clippers finished. So the Rebbe said that the holding point now is that that's been completed. It's been finished. Enough. The Jewish people, the Rebbe, I heard from the Rebbe the word enough several times. The Rebbe said, it's enough. Finished. We've already been mashlim, completed everything. Now it's only Kabbalah's Pnei Moshiach said, you're receiving. Moshiach, that's the whole avodah. I heard that from the Rebbe on Chaye Sorah Tovshin Nun Bey. on Chai Tzorah, the Rabbi said from now on, the whole of it is only just to receive Moshiach in our lives. And Amen Kain Yerotzen, and it should be soon, and it should be with great simcha, simchas Eilam. Okay, so have a good day, you guys, and have a good Kabbalah Satorah. Well, the main thing is we have to be in Mekabel, Torah with Moshiach together, from, how they call it, the real McCoy, from the Hashem himself. We have to be Mekabel, Torah, Chadosha, take him out moments, and have a good day, and have a good night, and have a good, have a good yonder. Okay.
We can take this?
Yeah, very good.
Nice.
You are.
I think I should start with here.
Okay.
Why did I leave my towels here? Because I went to visit a place before I went home. I went to a bookstore.
Oh, really? It's okay.
I bought a book.
Don't forget the cocoa later.
No, because I see as an hour for dinner, I asked the rabbi, oh, was Rabbi Gafne God or something happened? The rabbi said,
I took them straight home. I did a and Kabbalah Satorah,
When I get stuck, I should ask later.
and continue.
Listen, if I get stuck,
Thank you very much.
somebody ask me a question.
Where's your, okay.
Yeah. Take
Hey, camera?
Camera, you got it. Listen, I didn't take it, I want to ask you a question. I have